Yes, it's visible, Dafne.
It's visible? Okay. So then, yes, as Gail was saying, I am the BRC IP manager. So I deal with scouting innovation at the trust and at the university, and see whether commercialization of that innovation it's a good route in order to bring a benefit to patients. And as today, so my talk will give you an overview of my work and how we do this at the hospital. So first of all, our research is focused on the patient, and everything that we do has a patient in the center. And our goal is really to bring a new solution to improve a patient's life. And this is aligned with the hospital vision of bringing innovative and sustainable healthcare. So our researchers, academics, or clinicians identify in a problem in their healthcare pathway, and they come up with an idea. Maybe it is a new diagnostic or a new therapeutic. And then through different steps of the research, going through basic research where you test and validate your first assumptions, and then through preclinical research where actually you start testing your hypothesis and maybe your new treatment on animal models or cell line models, up to a point where actually we develop something that we can testing in a clinical setting, and then it's where we do clinical trials involving patients, and where then we do collect the information and feedback also from patients. And this is with the ultimate goal to arrive to solutions that can be approved and delivered back in the hospital. And not only, the aspiration is not only in Addenbrooke's, but also if the solution can impact positively patients' life actually worldwide. So how can we have that global outreach? So we are an academic organization, so our first way is, of course, to publish the outcomes of our studies. But also we can build guidelines, provide trainings for the new generation of medical practitioner, and deliver, again, expert advice when requested. However, there is another way of broadening the outreach again of our research is through commercialization of intellectual property. So what is IP? So intellectual property rights are legal rights that protects the creation of the mind. And if someone wants to use these rights, they need to obtain permission. And IP, it's generated daily at the hospital and in academia through the delivery of patient care, education, and R&D programs. And there are different types of intellectual property rights. Some arise automatically. You don't need to apply anywhere. They already, again, exist as soon as, for example, you write a piece of text, and the type of IP that is generated is called copyright. At the hospital, we generate copyright, for example, when we develop a new software to diagnose some new a disease, or maybe when we write, again, a new manual to train a member of staff. We have database rights that, for example, protect a curated database of information that might be required to train those diagnostic softwares. Nowadays, we hear a lot about artificial intelligence or machine learning, and definitely these are innovations that could help diagnose better certain type of diseases. Then probably the most known IP right is patents. So a patent is a registrable right. It does not arise automatically. You need to go to the patent office and send an application. And you cannot patent everything. You need to patent, you can patent only things that are new. that are inventive. That means that it provides a non-obvious solution, and they are capable of industrial application. And in our research, we can develop, for example, new medical devices and new medicines, or maybe new diagnostic methods that could be patented. The interest of patenting is that it gives a protection for a limited time, 20 years, and therefore it ensures the monopoly of the use of that particular innovation. And we will discuss later why that is important. And there are other types of IP rights. One type is the design rights. We in healthcare don't use these rights much because it protects only the appearance of something. One probably famous design right is the right that protected the shape of the Coca-Cola bottle. And another, again, right that is quite famous is the trademarks that is protecting brands, for example, the Coca-Cola brand, keeping the same example. So now we are an academic organization and we are a hospital, and why are we talking about commercialization of IP? This is because commercializing intellectual property can be a vehicle to positively influence the services and treatments in the NHS by broadening the dissemination of knowledge outside our hospital, giving healthcare community new products and treatments, which otherwise would remain only at the bench at an experimental level. And also can attract industry partners as investment to then develop solutions that are better tailored to the patient need. And the importance of intellectual property has been recognized also by the Department of Health, which indeed again recognize IP as an important output of research and expect us, hospitals, academic organizations to effectively disseminate IP, and commercialization is one of these routes. So another reason why we talk about commercialization is, unfortunately, some innovations require partnering with industry in order then to bring them back to the public. Imagine, for example, therapeutics, the field of therapeutics. Here it's a rough examples of the numbers and investment that are required in order to create a new treatment, a new drug. So at the drug discovery, you might have 10,000 candidates potentially again eligible to become the new drug, but out of these 10,000 compounds, probably only one will result successful from all, again, the testing that is required. And so it's estimated that for a drug, you would require at least 12, 15 years of development, more than $1 billion of investment in order to create that treatment. And this includes for each drug, all the trials, failed trials, in order to screen, again, those other compounds. And of course, these are a magnitude of activities that us as a hospital, we cannot undertake. Another element is that, of course, we cannot manufacture at scale, and manufacturing of medical devices and therapeutics needs to be done in compliance with strict regulations. And also we cannot, as a hospital, ensure large distribution of solutions that, again, could benefit again, patients worldwide. And so that is the reason why also in most of the cases, we needed to partner with the industry. So how we do this? We commercialize IP by granting licenses, and licenses are contracts that grant permission to use a specific asset. It can be a patent, it can be a software code, or other type of rights. And that right is just for a specific purpose. Technically, it's called the field, and also in a specific geographical region. So you can choose to permit the use of your IP maybe only in the UK or only in France, or maybe you want it to be used worldwide. So in a license, there are always a licensor, the owner of the asset, and a licensee. And the licenses can be granted with different levels again, of freedom of use. Exclusive license allows the licensee to be the sole user of the asset. And the other extreme, we have non-exclusive licenses where the IP owner can use and license to more than one licensee. So at each stage, we do decide what is the appropriate route for the commercialization of the IP. And the goal for us is to be able to ensure that that particular innovation has the broadest outreach possible. So, of course, we cannot license everything. Before any IP license, we go through a very thorough due diligence, because we can license IP only if we have permission from patient consent, research ethical approvals, research funders, and also we ensure that that IP has been generated in accordance with the GDPR, so the General Data Protection Regulation and Data Governance. And our, must is that we, of course, never include identifiable patient data. So once we ensure that we have all this permission, then we enter into a license. Hopefully, we do receive at a certain point some revenue out of this licensing. And the revenue is shared among all contributors of the IP. And this is because we want to support, better care and foster innovation. So we share back with the funders of the research. So this can be charities like ACT, Addenbrookes Charitable Trust, the British Heart Foundation, CRUK, and so on. It can be governmental bodies like the NIHR that funds a lot of our research programs. And this is, again, is really to support further the funders' work. We share back with the hospital and the collaborators that have participated in that piece of research. Those can be other NHS trusts in the UK, but also worldwide hospitals and universities. And this is to support the healthcare services and research. We do also share back with the IP creators, and this to encourage more innovative ideas. And this is because if you imagine, again, all the duties that clinicians and researchers have, developing something new requires a lot of time and a lot of efforts, sometimes even outside of their working hours. And then we want really to encourage them to continue sharing with us their ideas, because they might have, again, the solution of something that, the solution that could help many patients. So how we help them at the hospital and at the university is that we researchers are supported by professionals in the technology transfer field. I'm based in the R&D department at the Trust, and I deal with anything that is related to intellectual property. And I'm responsible of finding those ideas at the hospital and at the university. But I also work with other two offices, one in the university that is called Cambridge Enterprise, and one that supports activities at the Trust that is called the Health Tech Enterprise. And both organizations, again, are special, have again a group of professionals in the field of IP commercialization. So in order to commercialize IP and to develop actually something from an idea stage to something that it's it's concrete. You know, it's either a medical device or a new treatment. You need to constantly ask yourself these questions, and it's really an iterative process. Really being aware of the problem that your inventions wants to solve, and the advantages that you think your invention could bring compared to the current treatment or current care, and also to try to generate through research the evidence that provides that proves that your inventions brings an advantage. And as I was saying, it's an iterative process that we don't do in isolation. We ask for many advice, and definitely patient focus groups and the patient feedback. It's a very important one, because we want to develop the things that are tailored to the need of patients. Usually the journey, well, it's never linear, but here it's represented as a linear path, but it's somebody coming up with an idea and really try to work up and gather the evidence required again to prove its value. And then at a certain point, usually prior public disclosure, we ask ourselves, is it worth protecting the IP, maybe through a patent? And this is because we are an academic organization. Protecting IP and commercializing IP does not mean impeding publication. We believe that knowledge needs to be disseminated, and therefore there are mechanisms where you can achieve both. And we continue then performing trials and studies in order then to acquire more and more evidence in order to prove ourselves that the solutions that we have created is indeed bringing a benefit, to the point that we can also convince others to then join us in the journey of development. And this can be other existing company or companies that we spin out from the university or the hospital. So there are new ventures that we create from scratch in order then to continue developing that product or that solution. So I finish with two examples that you might have heard, two successful stories. So one is CAMPROB. CAMPROB has been developed by Professor Ganapragasam, and is the result of the collaboration between the university and CUH. And it is a device that can perform prostate cancer diagnosis in a better way than current transrectal biopsy methods. And this is because CAMPROB, how it is designed, allows, again, the recovery of the biopsy with a reduced risk of infection, reduce also patient discomfort, and also reduce the cost of the healthcare system. And currently, the device has been licensed to the company JAB that is currently distributing products in hospitals, and we hope soon to see CAMPROB used by again many hospitals. So, and the second success story is the cytosponge. You might have heard of the peel on a string. This has been created by Professor Rebecca Fitzgerald, and it's a device that allows early detection of esophageal cancer. And it can be used instead of endoscopic procedure that usually requires sedation, whereas, and of course, are performed at the hospital. Whereas the cytosponge is just a pill that you can swallow, and then it can be retrieved through a string. And you can, again, have samples from the esophagus through, again, a procedure that is less demanding for the patient. It can be administered at GP, and again, it's a solution that can reduce costs for the healthcare system. And the cytosponge has been already shown to be very useful during the COVID-19 outbreak, where endoscopic procedure could not be used because of the fear of virus-associated infection, virus association. Virus infection associated to aerosol generated during the endoscopic procedure. And then we hope the cytosponge to be used in order then to screen a large amount of people in order to reach that early detection of esophageal cancer that it's required in the field. That's it, I'm done. So thank you very much for